welcome to the very, very first episode of Reading Bites. This is the Monster Librarian blog cast, podcast, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk about stuff. I am Michelle Lee, and today I have with me Brosia Lee.
Hi.
And Lady T.
Hello there.
And we're going to be talking about, books. Today we're going to start out with books that are important to us. Why books are important. So, who wants to go first?
You should.
You're nominated.
Okay. Can we nominate you as tribute?
So, books are important to me because, they add more detail to situations. Like, if you go onto the internet, it gives you a brief explanation for what something is. If you go into an encyclopedia, it gives you the whole meaning.
What about fiction books?
Fiction books and stories help you build your imagination, and some kids and teenagers, they don't have many friends sometimes. So if they read an imaginary book, it gives them some joy.
And Brosia, why are books important?
Books are important to me because I think it can help you get a safe space. You can sit and relax and read a book and forget about whatever problems you're facing in your life, even just for a few minutes. That, and I grew up with books, so they've always been an important part of my life.
I agree with both of you. I learn a lot through books. If there's something that I'm interested in, I can seek out books about it. And I don't have to ask anybody. I don't have to take up anybody else's time or anything. And also, I was one of those kids growing up who did not have a lot of friends and who very badly needed a safe space. And sitting in my room and reading was much safer than, trying to socialize and everything like that. That was very important to me. Books kind of felt like friends. They were always there for me. They didn't let me down. They were exciting and dramatic and usually happy, except I usually got into horror books too, so those aren't always happy.
Horror books are nice. I like them. They really bring me edge. You have the romance books. I don't really like romance books.
Vampires.
You have the vampire books, which I wouldn't even really classify as horror anymore. They've been sparkled up at this point. And
let me bite you, and you will fall in love with me.
Oh yes, Eduardo.
Yes.
But there's also there's also sci-fi books, which are like, oh my god, aliens.
Yeah, for role players, those are really good.
Everything's good for role players.
Everything is good for role players. By the way, everybody here's a role player.
Woo!
Yeah.
Science fiction books, a lot of times lately too, they have social science fiction where they talk about social issues like overpopulation and racism, and a lot of science fiction covers stuff like that more than necessarily just spaceships and aliens. They're more about, hey, how are we going to be nice to aliens if we can't even be nice to each other?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, because you always see movies, like recently a friend and I, who shall not be named unless he or she wants to, I'll ask about that later, we went and saw the new Alien movie, what was it called? Something
Covenant?
Alien Covenant. Yeah. And I thought it was really good. But it seemed a lot more like it was about aliens and, oh my god, these aliens! They're all over the place! They're doing
gonna kill us!
Face huggers! Oh!
Face huggers!
Oh.
Today's youth, guys. What about reading bites? Well, the Monster Librarian primarily we started out focusing on horror because a lot of librarians didn't read a lot of horror.
I love horror.
Yeah.
And mystery.
And the way you know this is because it's called Monster Librarian.
Yeah. But a lot of librarians didn't read that. That wasn't. It still, in a lot of circles, is not considered the fantasy, the science fiction, the romance. It's not considered real reading or important reading. So when you get a library who has a certain amount of money to spend on books every year, they didn't know what was good and what wasn't.
That's for her.
So we started the blog because we wanted to recommend to them what the best use of their money was. So let's go with each genre, if we can think of one. Come up with a horror book you think every library should have in it.
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps are a good one. Is a good one.
Because, like, if anything supernatural does happen, you're going to be like, I am prepared for this. There might not be a happy ending, but I will live.
I don't know. There's a lot to choose from. But I think definitely one that we should have is called Wolfheart.
I did not put her up to that. Shameless plug for my book, but that was her.
Because I'm a good daughter.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think the classic horror books are absolutely essential. I think that even though they're not always easy to read because the style was very different then, I think your Frankenstein, your Dracula, I think it's very important.
Blah, 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 blah.
I think it's very important.
Say blah, blah, blah. Sorry, Mom.
I think it's very important that as people get interested in horror, they look back to see where we came from. Okay, science fiction.
Ooh.
Essential science fiction books.
Harry Potter. No, that's fantasy.
That's fantasy, yeah.
Harry Potter is awesome.
Okay, I'm going to throw one out there. I think Hunger Games. I think it's science fiction because I consider it science fiction because it is a dystopia. It is a future world. It is very technologically advanced. I mean, they have, giant coliseums that they can completely, they can make it to whatever they want. They can put whatever dangers they want.
And then immediately a forest. How's that?
Yeah, exactly. Clearly those things are not necessarily grown there.
No.
But more than that, that's one of the social science fictions I was talking about. They are talking about the whole series is very much about how the government controls the people.
Yeah. No, I don't like communism countries.
How do you know?
I don't know because I wasn't raised in one.
Well, there you go.
But I find the idea of it, not having much of a choice of what I'm going to do. I like being, free, basically.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I think that if we want to get into politics, I think that the perfect politics is a combination of stuff. No one thing is going to be good. No. But yeah, I mean, you look in that is kind of a communism situation, isn't it? Where there's each district was being used to create certain things, and that clearly the people were being purposely kept poor from districts 1 and 2, and the rich people who could train their whole lives for the games were winning. But see, that's the example of the social science fiction. There are those elements in there that make you think. So, okay, book. Science fiction book that you think absolutely should be in.
I can't remember what the name of the book was called, but there is an author, a friend of mine, of Michelle Lee's, who wrote, was it called The Day They Came? Is that what it's called?
Cody Boyd.
Cody Boyd. He wrote a book called The Day They Came, I think. I can't remember.
Yes.
But I read the first chapter or so, and I really liked it. I haven't gotten back to it, but it's a really good book so far. I haven't gotten back to it because I've been busy with school and stuff, but,
Yeah, and school makes you read certain books. They don't let you read the books you want to read. They make you read the books you have to read.
Yeah, I don't really read much science fiction, but it sounds really interesting, to be honest.
Yeah. all of those things.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine if you haven't gotten to science fiction yet. I'm sure you will eventually.
Yeah.
There's never enough time to read everything, is there?
No.
Okay, fantasy.
New books are coming out every
Fantasy.
day.
Ooh.
I wanted
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter? Why? Why is Harry Potter essential?
I want to be a wizard.
Because you want to be a wizard. Okay,
You're a lizard, Harry!
Harry, you're a wizard.
You're a hairy lizard.
Yes.
You're a gizzard, Larry.
why are the Harry Potter books important to you?
Why? Because, like, Harry Potter started off, like, not very good with magic, and he grew better and better.
So he showed that he was human. Well, humanish.
Yeah.
I like
He made
that
mistakes.
he made mistakes and he was determined to try to do the right thing. I think that's important because
Yeah.
it's hard to grow up and try to do the right thing when everybody around you is trying to do other things.
Yeah. And with Harry Potter, it shows you that you can become stronger and stronger with anything, and you believe in yourself to do it.
I think the Harry Potter books are important because, well, they're important to me because as they came out, we would buy them and we always used them for family story time. So they always remind me of like driving to the park and sitting in the car in the park reading to the kids.
Yeah.
That's something that, go, Amber. Or go! Portia?
A book I actually finished today is called Loki's Wolves. I would recommend it because it's fantasy, but it's also based a lot on Norse mythology, and I really, really like it so far. And, well, I finished it. I liked it a lot, so. Yeah.
So my actual book that I think should be in every library for fantasy, because Harry Potter, I agree, but, Lady T picked that. Mine is Beauty by Robin McKinley.
Oh.
It is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and it's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful prose.
Hey, you know what that sounds like?
What?
It sounds beautiful.
It does sound beautiful. It is.
Oh, and another one for science fiction that just came to my mind that I just forgot because I started talking about it. So I'll come back. Oh, I remember it now. Cinder, the Cinder series by Melissa Meyer. It's about it's the fairy tales, only like Cinderella's a cyborg, and
That sounds awesome.
yeah, it is awesome. And Rapunzel is a alien from the moon.
That's believable. Nobody has hair that long. Nobody.
Well, so does Cinder, but it's, like,
But, okay.
Okay, so let's talk about, we talked about, like, why books are important to you. How about why books are important to everybody, to our country, to our society?
Because they help us know history, like, especially school books.
Well, yeah, but don't you think that maybe when schools use things like that all the time, it kind of just sucks that wanting to learn about history and things like that out of you?
They should make history exciting. They should tell it less detailed, maybe.
Wait, we're not on... This is not the school episode. We should not be talking about this. Okay.
No, I mean, this is okay.
We are going to have a school episode, though.
Well, yes, we're going to have a school episode. Books
Yay!
in school. So I had brought up to the girls earlier about how the Ferguson Library was very instrumental in keeping a safe space and a calm space during the riots, and how libraries traditionally have been a place where anybody is welcome. You can't tell somebody what they can and can't read. You can't tell somebody that they can and can't be there unless they're being violent or something. But generally speaking, it doesn't matter what age you are, what race you are, what income level you are. Generally, you're welcome at libraries. They are a place to go.
And
They're your safe place.
And another thing is, books tend to bring people together. Like, okay, so
I'm walking in the hallway, and I see Brajalee. Hey, Brajalee!
hi, Lady T.
Yeah, have you read the new book yet?
No.
Walks away. But if she has read the new book, they're gonna start talking about it. Have you read the new book yet?
Yeah, do you know what, Bobby Bill did to Billy Bob?
Oh my god, he betrayed him so hard.
I know, right? Okay, but what I was saying was that over the summer, at the end of July, my friend and I, a different friend, but from earlier, but we went to this anime convention that was held at our public library.
I went there with her.
You were?
I'm offended. You forgot.
No, Ron convention. You went when she was there, but no, it's just
we also earlier in the year went to a how-to convention.
Oh yeah.
So
that's
also at our local library.
Mm-hmm.
But anime, manga, they were selling things, they were showing things, I made friends. I call one of them Dean Winchester because she was cosplaying as Dean Winchester, and it was awesome. And I got all of their phone numbers, and I haven't talked to any of them since I saw them.
No, just make them read another book. Talk to them about that book.
Yeah.
Yep, that's just logic.
Does anybody else here do that? Does anybody else get a bunch of phone numbers, and then you're like, cool, all these new phone numbers. I'm not going to call any of them until they ask me to call them.
Yeah. I do it with some people.
Okay, what about, this is going to be a rough one, okay? What about people who have some issues they're dealing with? What about finding books that help them with that? Like, I had read a book called Winter Girls by Lori House Anderson, and it is about a girl who has an eating disorder. Do you think that those kinds of books and being able to find those kinds of books in libraries, I mean, maybe if you go to a bookstore, you might not be able to buy those books, but if you're in a library, you can find those kinds of books. Do you think that's important?
That is very important, because if those people with the problems read them, they're going to get ideas of how to solve them or try to help start healing.
I'm actually currently writing a book where the main character suffers from insomnia, and it really shows in her day-to-day life how it affects her and how it affects her grades and her life in general. And it's really hard for her friends to keep up with her. Yeah. Now, it is a fantasy, so it doesn't really focus on, how you can help her or whatever, or how you can get help, but it still is, it's a very big part of it because it shows just how badly she's doing. It shows that that this is a real issue that is destroying her life. Well, I wouldn't say destroying.
So you can use fantasy settings for that kind of serious stuff too, right? Or even horror. One that I see a lot in mystery and horror, I see a whole lot of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes, like in Hunger Games, there was post-traumatic.
There definitely was in Hunger Games.
Katniss was like, "Hey, look, a deer," and then it was, "Oh God."
Yeah, definitely. Katniss definitely had a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder. And of course, she should have. Yeah. She absolutely should have.
She witnessed her best friend-ish childlike sister die. That's horrible.
Yeah.
And, more than that, too, I mean, do you think that it's important that as people are reading, they read about characters that are like them? It's called representation.
Yeah, they can relate to them. Mm-hmm. Like, if they know that, they shouldn't, base their life off of that character, but they should try to, solve their problems, based on what that character does.
That's why I think a little advice for any writers out there, I'm one to talk. But if you are trying to appeal to a wider audience, you should have multiple characters that are different in many ways. I have one girl who suffers from insomnia. I have one girl who is very secretive and is hiding things from everyone. then there's one boy who's just kind of there, doesn't really know what to do with his life, and that's what it's like for a lot of people.
I had read a fantasy book by N.K. Jemisin. It's one of her 100,000 Suns trilogy books. I can't remember which one. I'm terrible. My memory is going. I'm getting so old. My birthday's on Sunday, by the way. I'm gonna be super old. But the main character was blind. Completely blind. The entire story was told from a blind point of view. And she could, for sometimes she could see magic. So she was, clinically blind, but occasionally she could see things if they were infused with magic. There are gods in that series. And certain people that she saw, she knew she could see them because they were gods. She could see certain magic items. But for the most part, she was blind. And I was really, really impressed on how it was handled because things were still really, really descriptive. They just weren't visually descriptive. There was always smells and feels and other senses.
It feels so fluffy. And it smells like roses. It must be roses. Oh, yep, there's a thorn.
So something else that comes up a lot too, since we're segueing in from blind people, what about comic books?
Comic books?
Daredevil. Daredevil's blind. Hawkeye has hearing issues. Clearly, there's plenty of characters who have post-traumatic stress disorder or depression. Iron Man is an alcoholic. I mean, do you think that even when most of the stories deal with, beating up bad guys or defeating evil, do you think that having somebody who is flawed means a lot to readers?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have flaws too. Every single person has flaws. You there, sitting at your computer thinking, oh yeah, I don't have flaws. That's a flaw right there.
You angsty teen that thinks that, just because you're 12 and a half and writing lemon fan fictions on Wattpad means you know everything. That's a little self-insert there. Just saying.
Okay, so we've talked about elements that are appealing in fiction. What about elements that you don't like to see? You hate that they just makes a book completely unenjoyable for you.
Like killing.
Cliche.
Killing? You don't like killing? That's okay. If you don't like books that have
something I hate in movies and books. Like tropes. Like they do the same trope. Can't they just create a new one?
Yeah, well, I mean, tropes and stereotypes are there because they've appealed to people. Harry Potter, you said you liked Harry Potter, but Harry Potter is a very big trope. The kid who learns that he has a special destiny and is the only one that can fight the evil lord, I think is a little bit different because he's not very good at it.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I don't consider that cliche because they do it like that.
I mean, that's the same story as Luke Skywalker. Special kid born to defeat evil. I mean, that same story's everywhere. That's King Arthur.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the cliche stories where it's the same story with different characters over and over and over again. Like, for example, I have a friend at school who isn't even really a friend, but, we're going to ignore that for right now.
An associate.
An acquaintance, a frenemy, or whatever. She knows who I'm talking about. She probably knows who I'm talking about, too. But, so every day she comes to me with a new romance book and says, "Here, read the back." And it's usually some cliche book, like, "I'm the new girl at blank high school. I have a crush on the jock. His name is blank." But what I don't know,
Larry.
But what I don't know is that the queen bee blank is already his girlfriend. Because, I'm very bad at what I'm doing. And this is a super cliche story. There are some people that can God God, what is the English word that I'm trying to pronounce right now?
I think there are some people who want familiar when they read, and that's why those books exist. They want to know that
What's going to happen.
In the end, there are people who don't want to worry about whether there's going to be a happy ending or not. Maybe they don't get happy endings in their own life. Maybe they just really they don't like books that make them think or feel scared or something. I think likewise, a lot of people in horror never want that happy ending. They can't handle a happy ending. They need that twist at the end that makes sure that nobody lives.
Now, nobody shall live. No, you shall not pass.
I think that's just as cliche. The nobody lives, the monster's still alive at the end. I think that's
but what they
just
don't
as cliche.
know is that the headless horseman is creeping up behind them.
Dun dun.
Something he's still there.
Something one of my friends on the internet and I came up with was a horror story about a group of teenagers who decided that they were going to throw a party. But what they did was they took that party and decided to go play Slenderman, the 8 Pages, not the video game, like the real life version, out in a graveyard.
Oh, I would never do that. I don't like graveyards. Was that night?
Yes, and they
I'd be like,
Of course it was.
and they ended up taking it into a warehouse, and I don't really want to spoil too much because I might end up making a story soon. But but the main antagonist was what us in the anime community would call a yandere. She loved the main character. She was so in love with him.
Senpai, come here.
She was so in love with him that she actually killed half of the people. She didn't kill everyone.
You shall not take my senpai from me.
And in fact, in the last minute, she kissed him, and he turned and attacked her as the police were coming in. And so he was arrested for attacking her, and she got away.
Which reminds me a whole lot of, I just watched the Death Note movie that came out.
Well,
No spoilers. Oh wait, why?
He tried. A friend of mine tried to spell death on me and ended up spelling DETH. So I'm not gonna die.
I would say no spoilers, but I'm guessing it's basically the exact same as the anime. So
I liked it. Some people who started out with the anime and the manga didn't really like it because they thought that it wasn't really as intense and as comprehensive. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not as detailed.
question: did Light live at the end?
I don't want to tell you. That's spoilers.
If it's no, then it's probably just like the anime.
Spoilers.
Damn you, River Song.
Which also reminds me, that's something that I wanted to point out when we talk about genres and everything. Let's expand to media, because everybody does more than just read. We've been mentioning TV shows and movies and stuff, but what do you think about stories like the Doctor Who episodes that, like, Are You My Mummy? That seem horribly creepy and scary, but in the end, the stories aren't actually that scary.
Yeah.
There's always Curse of the Black Spot.
That was one that you'd think would be kind of scary, but ended up being really, really sweet.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that one, Lady T.
No.
They end up on a pirate ship, and there is a siren that is stealing people when they get hurt. And it turns out, it turns out that she is a comprehensive program, a nurse program, a doctor program that is taking care of them when they're injured. She is stuck on a spaceship, and she can cross over. They are stuck in her field or whatever. And yeah, so I mean, it starts out really scary. There's a lot of scary moments, but then in the end, the resolution is like, oh, that's not nearly as scary. I mean, what do you think about books like that? Movies like that, stuff like that.
Movies,
I think both can be really interesting. So I have read one book where it was like, oh, the horror, and then it was, but it all ends in true love.
I don't watch scary movies. Like, I despise them.
But you like Goosebumps.
I love horror books. Like, love them. I love mystery horror, I love mystery, and I love horror.
What are some things about the books that you love? Like, what do you like to see in the books? Like I am a sucker.
I love to watch people go missing, and then they end up dead or faked death.
Faked death?
Yeah, I love that. One
like...
day I'm going to go missing and come back as a pink-haired person who has the name of Strawberry Microphone.
Strawberry Microphone.
Okay. So,
I'm a sucker for paranormals. If it has vampires or werewolves, especially shapeshifters or fairies, or I'll try to read it. If it has any of those in it, I will try to read it.
Yeah.
You're all type of things. Because there's going to be lots of fairies and Norse monsters and stuff.
I'm working on a fairy book right now, too.
oh, yay!
Yeah.
So there's a horror book that my friend is reading, and she read me the first chapter. And it was so unrealistic. It was like...
Oh, here comes the unicorn that kills everybody. La da da. Here it comes. It blasts you with the death beam.
No, I'm not even joking. I'm pretty sure this is basically what happened in the book. Something shattered the window. A piece of glass flew and sliced the entire hand off of this person whose name I can't remember. And then they died of shock.
They died of shock. The more
that's like the Final Destination movies, where they're crazy deaths.
If their hand got cut off, they would bleed to death, if anything.
I like, especially when it comes to horror books, things that are more realistic, unless it's specifically set in a fantasy world.
Well, she says she likes things that are more realistic, but this is the queen of creepypasta here, and creepypastas aren't exactly realistic. How would anybody survive in a creepypasta world? They kill so many people. I mean, they're like...
There's so much blood? Like,
yeah.
For real? I'm actually working on a... what I'm trying to make is a good OC. Because my first OC, her name was Lily. She was so overpowering and so crazy, and it was... I just realized I'm yelling.
Yeah.
That is something I don't like in stories. Overpowered.
Yes.
If the main characters are super overpowered, that's again back to Harry Potter and Katniss. They were not overpowered.
No, I think, especially in fantasy stories, that the protagonist and antagonist deserve a certain amount of overpowerness. They deserve those few moments of, oh my god, I just did that. They deserve those few moments of...
but I don't have any magic powers, and I have those moments of, oh my god, I just did that.
I had an OC. Her name was Christy. I'm like, so she had an angel, and she was a goddess, and she was the goddess of Minnie, and she could control everything. And I'm like, that is not right. I need to change that. So I ended up remaking her to where she's a human, and she speaks with the paranormal. She can see the paranormal. She can do stuff with the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it's not exciting when there's no challenge.
Yeah. Back on the topic of creepypasta, I have read some creepypastas that were really good. Like, it was insane how crazy good they were. A few just off the top of my head. The Russian Sleep Experiment. That one was pretty good. I liked that one a lot.
By the way, if you're ever into creepypastas, there are a lot of creepypasta stories on YouTube. You can just sit and play them and listen to them. And I do want to talk about that before our time is up. Books. Books are changing. When I was your age, you just had books. Now, you guys, you have ebooks, you have books on tape have always been a thing too, but you guys have ebooks. I take out books from the library on my Kindle app on my phone all the time. And you have places like Wattpad where people are writing interactive stories. fan fiction was even a thing when I was a kid, but in order to do fan fiction, you had to pretty much, I mean, you didn't have email. You had to, print it out and send it around to the people you wanted to send it. There were all these little fanzines that where people were making in their basement with a copy machine and stuff. But now you can just go on fanfiction.net or Wattpad or something like that, and you can have all these stories right there in your hands. Do you think that kids your age people are saying that people don't read as much as they used to? Are we really not reading as much, or are we reading more? Because it's my theory that we're reading more online. We're reading more in other forums. We're listening to stories on YouTube. Yeah. We're reading stories on Wattpad and fan fiction. We're reading things on Facebook.
We probably will spend like half our lives on electronics. And maybe like a third of that is listening to books and reading books on the internet.
I read a lot of news articles and journal entries and essays. I didn't used to read that stuff growing up. I read fiction books and I read what book school made me. But now I am always reading, history articles and did you know articles. And I didn't used to.
The unicorn concerns.
Does it?
You don't say.
Well, and then places like crack.com. I mean, I find that there's a lot of information there. I have the first Cracked book about the everything you thought you knew, and I learned a lot. I am constantly learning, and that all comes from the internet and then translated into books.
Yeah. Being a teenager in 2017, I've noticed that I started to decline. I started reading a lot more on the internet and stopped going to libraries or reading books or reading like paper books or things like that.
Yeah, I don't use the internet much to read. I usually use books because I don't trust the internet sometimes.
I can send you some books.
I can understand why you wouldn't trust the internet.
Like, I like to have it physically in my hand so it doesn't just glitch out and be like, oh no, the page has disconnected. I lost my place!
Well, see, what I did is, like, I've been reading through this series, and as soon as I was done with one book, if I'm done at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can still just go and check the next book out of the library on my phone. I don't have to wait until the next morning or anything. I can just keep going. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing that I like about it. But do you think that other teenagers your age are reading more online or just not reading?
Not reading.
Not reading?
I'm going to go play Minecraft.
I think it really, really depends because I know lots of people who read books. I know some people who read online and books. I know some people just read online. I know some people who don't read at all.
Broja is very, very active with Wattpad and other places where she writes collaborative stories, and a lot of her friends also, I mean, they're constantly planning new stories, new comics, things like that.
Go follow me at Broja_Lee on Wattpad. I am really friendly over there.
She's really friendly everywhere.
Go follow me in real life. Don't be a stalker.
It's like come follow me in real life. That's called a stalker.
Yeah. Or annoying. But so you think that there really is a decline of reading?
There is.
I also wonder sometimes if it's normal in middle school, high school for kids to stop reading as much for pleasure because they're required to read so much for school.
Yeah.
Like I've always loved reading. I don't mind doing the reading stuff, but then teachers saying, "Hey, go read your history textbook."
I'm like, no, I don't want to read now.
It's like, I don't want to read that. I want to read the fantasy. I want to read the creepypasta. I want to read the fan fictions. I want to be myself. I don't want to sit around and read your romance books that you're making me read. I don't really like romance books.
So do you think you read less or more during the school year?
I think I read less.
School year? Okay, so in the school year, in the summer, I crave reading. I crave, can we walk up to the library now? but we usually don't have time because we're really busy.
All right, here's my question. Are you talking about reading the books we want to read?
Period. Reading,
Okay,
period.
I think reading period, I do still read less during the school year because, like last year, I failed a test once because I didn't want to read my history book because I did not want to spend 2 hours reading 4 chapters just because, yeah. And I myself am a visual learner, so sitting and reading a textbook isn't going to help me.
I think that, and that we'll get into more of that later in another episode, I'm sure, because that is something that I had a problem with too, is I have learned so much more about history after being out of school, because in school we learned dates and names and places. Out of school, I have watched so many shows that really kind of, they showed me how things were overlapping and everything, and gave me a context and an understanding that I didn't have before.
So when I was in 5th grade, and Lady T, I don't know if you did this too, but at the end of the day, we would watch a video called The History of America or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It was so good. It helped tie things together after a long day of here. This is what you're going to need for your test.
That is one of the ones. I watched The Untold History of the United States, and also there's a series that was done by, I think, CNN, that was the 60s, the 70s, the 80s now, that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah. And because I'm a visual learner, that's something that really, really helps me, because I can look at a textbook and go, okay, I've read this, but I'm not seeing it. And then I can look at a video and say, okay, I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it, I know what's going on. So,
Do you think that's something that books fail to do, or?
If you do it right, books will do it good.
If you have a good imagination.
Like Loki's Wolves did a really good job of not being too descriptive, but also being descriptive enough for me to see what's going on.
Yeah, if you read it and you pay attention instead of being like, oh, I'm just going to read this to make the teacher think I'm reading. If you pay attention, you can literally see it in your mind.
Like, many times I've just been like, I do not want to do this. There's 5 minutes left until class ends. I'm just going to sit here, stare at the book, and pretend like I'm reading long enough to get through this last 5 minutes.
And usually I'll just flip ahead, for assignments. If I have to read a book, I'll flip ahead, oh, here's what happens. So I'll take this and guess what happens in the middle. Yeah.
And there are some books, like I read Red Queen by... I never pay attention to authors. I'm so sorry.
I should know.
By Victoria Aveyard. Graveyard. Victoria. I don't remember. It's Victoria something, I believe. But sometimes when I'm reading, I will read, and then someone will ask me a question, and then I'll end up skimming ahead a little bit, and I'll be like, okay, I didn't really miss anything. With that book, that happened, and I was like, wait, what's going on? Because it seriously went from 1 minute, this main character is standing up on this floating platform, and next minute she's falling to her death. It's what? That's I think that's one of those.
You were talking about overwriting earlier. There is a book by Anne Rice, Queen of the Damned, and Anne Rice is really known for overwriting, and we love her anyway. But there is a 26-page chapter about a character called Baby Jinx who gets turned into a vampire. And it's about Baby Jinx and how she ends up getting turned into a vampire and what she does afterwards. And at the end of the chapter, she dies. She dies. So there's this entire giant chapter of a character that just dies at the end of the chapter and doesn't even really... It's supposed to show what the normal life of a vampire is.
So
But
my friend, I'm not gonna say her name. Let's just call her Sharpie. She's been reading a book called Percy and the Light. It's the second.
Percy Jackson, the Lightning. Yeah.
It's the second Percy Jackson, and she says the character has almost died 3 or 4 times in 3 or 4 chapters.
That happens.
So it's like Harry Potter.
Yep.
That's something like.
Oh, there's a hole in front of me. Better avoid it. Oh no! Somebody catches me before I fall in.
Okay, so we're hitting kind of our time limit of what I want it to be. Okay, so sum up. Books, good, bad. Anything else you want to say?
I love books.
Follow me on
Thank
Wattpad.
you. Follow me in real life.
That's called a stalker. Don't
Yes,
follow.
I know.
Don't follow her in real life. Don't follow any of us. in
My
real life,
Lady
please.
T.
Okay, well, we will be back to you. We're going to try to do these monthly.
Read.
I'm Lady T.
Tell us what you're reading. We want to know. We need recommendations.
All right. I'm Brocha Lee. That's Lady T. That's Michelle Lee. We're signing off. Goodbye.
Bye.